Somewhere in Dubai, there is an office building with hundreds of registered companies inside it. Not hundreds of employees. Not hundreds of products. Just hundreds of names on paper, each one a legal ghost. Each one holding assets worth millions. And each one connected to some of the most powerful and most wanted men on the planet. No signs on the doors. No staff at the desks. Just an address, a signature, and enough legal distance to make $50 billion disappear. $50 billion. That is not a rounding error. That is the GDP of entire nations. That is hospitals that were never built, pensions that were never paid, and sanctions that were never enforced, all because a small network of shell companies in one of the world's most glamorous cities made the money invisible. So here is the question that investigators, journalists, and governments have been asking for years. Who built the machine? Who runs it? And why has almost nobody gone to prison? Dubai has always sold itself as a miracle. A desert city that turned itself into a global hub of finance, luxury, and ambition in less than half a century. And for most visitors, that story holds. The skyline is real. The hotels are real. The money is very real. But behind the gleaming towers and the tax-free promises, a parallel economy has been running quietly for decades. One built not on commerce, but on concealment. When Western sanctions began tightening around Russian oligarchs following the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and then dramatically accelerated after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, enormous sums of money needed somewhere new to breathe. Dubai was ready. What investigators later uncovered was not just wealthy individuals moving money. It was an organized, sophisticated, and frighteningly efficient network layers of shell companies, nominee directors, and legal loopholes stacked so carefully that tracing a dollar from its origin to its destination could take years. Sometimes it was impossible entirely. This is the story of how that network was built, who it served, and the moment the world finally started paying attention. The architecture of invisibility. It starts with a simple idea. If you are a sanctioned billionaire, you cannot walk into a bank in London or New York and deposit your money. Your name is flagged. Your assets are frozen. The walls are closing in. But what if your name was not on anything? In Dubai, forming a company requires remarkably little. A registered address, a local agent, and a fee that most billionaires would spend on a dinner. The company exists legally. It can open bank accounts, hold property, and move money across borders. And if the true owner is hidden behind a nominee, a hired placeholder whose name appears on the documents instead, the paper trail ends there. Investigators began noticing the pattern around 2018. The same addresses appearing across hundreds of different companies. The same nominee directors signing off on transactions worth hundreds of millions. A single individual in some cases listed as the director of over 1,000 separate companies simultaneously. That was not business. That was engineering. The names behind the numbers. The real breakthrough came when journalists from a coalition of international outlets obtained leaked financial records documents that mapped the network in a way no regulator had managed to do publicly before. What they found was staggering. Oligarchs who had been placed under Western sanctions, men whose yachts had been seized in European ports, and whose London mansions had been frozen, still had active, flowing financial lives. The money had not stopped moving. It had simply moved somewhere the sanctions could not easily reach. Luxury apartments in Palm Jumeirah registered to companies that traced back, through 4 or 5 layers of ownership, to individuals on international watch lists. Yachts reflagged and ownership transferred to entities in free zones where disclosure requirements were almost non-existent. One property portfolio worth over $300 million was found registered across 17 different companies, each one owned by the next, like a set of Russian nesting dolls. The irony was not lost on investigators, the gatekeepers. But a machine like this does not run itself. Every shell company needs someone to set it up, maintain it, and keep the layers intact. And this is where the story becomes darker. A network of corporate service providers, law firms, consultancies, and formation agents had built entire business models around this service. Some operated in legal gray, others operated in ways that investigators allege crossed clear legal lines. They knew who their clients were. In many cases, the evidence suggests they knew exactly why the layers were necessary. One firm investigated by European authorities had processed incorporation documents for over 4,000 companies in a 5-year period. Client due diligence records, when finally obtained, were found to be either missing, minimal, or in some cases apparently fabricated. Red flags had been raised internally by junior employees. Those warnings, the records showed, had been set aside. The gatekeepers had become the enablers. When the curtain began to slip. Then came 2022, and everything accelerated. The invasion of Ukraine triggered the largest coordinated sanctions push in modern history. Western governments were under enormous pressure to show the money was being stopped. What they found instead was that it had largely already left. Intelligence agencies estimated that in the weeks before the sanctions packages were formally announced, billions of dollars in assets shifted jurisdiction. Companies were restructured overnight. Properties were transferred. Accounts were closed and reopened as if someone had been watching the calendar. The most chilling detail to emerge from the investigations was not the scale. It was the timing. In at least several documented cases, the asset movements preceded the public announcement of sanctions by days, sometimes less than 48 hours. The reorganizations were too precise, too fast, and too complete to be coincidental, which means the information came from somewhere, whether that points to surveillance of government communications, to sources inside regulatory bodies, or to something else entirely. That question has never been publicly answered. Several investigations are ongoing. No major conviction has yet emerged from the Dubai network specifically. $50 billion. Still largely unaccounted for. Still largely untouched. Dubai did not create this problem. Wealth concealment is as old as wealth itself, and every financial era has its geography of shadows. Switzerland once, Panama, the British Virgin Islands. The list shifts. The practice never ends. What makes this chapter different is the scale, the speed, and the brazenness. Money moved not in secret dark transactions, but through legal structures, registered addresses, and compliant professionals hidden in plain sight, buried under paperwork, protected by legitimacy itself. The lesson, if there is one, is uncomfortable. The most effective crime does not happen in the dark. It happens in a glass tower, on a signed form, with a company name nobody will ever recognize. And somewhere tonight, in a gleaming building in one of the world's most photographed cities, the machine is still running,